So in the second grade, when all of the other children wanted to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and princesses, I wanted to become a unicorn. And it was rooted in having seen this movie called The Last Unicorn. I don't know if anybody has seen that. In hindsight now, as a parent of 2 children, I think it was a bit dark to watch a movie about a red, fiery bull pushing all of the unicorns of the world into the ocean. However, when I applied to speak at Content Marketing World 2019, I told them that they should let me be here to speak to you because I am a unicorn. And here's what I shared. I get to tell stories using long-form storytelling, talking to real people, videography, audio files, and the like for a financial regulator, the U.S. Central Bank. So, what does that mean? What does that look like? The U.S. Central Bank, in the event that all of you don't know, is responsible for ensuring the stability, integrity, and efficiency of the economy and of payments. That means a lot of things. We are conducting economic research. We conduct economic research. We're known for our analyses of community development issues across the regions that we serve. So there are 12 reserve banks. We all study a certain corner of the country, and we're looking to inform and study the economic conditions of places, particularly low and moderate income communities, because the economies where all of you in the United States live all boil up to the national economy. So what does storytelling for the Fed look like? Well, because we knew we'd written economic research, and we were known fairly well for that, because we knew we were known for some reports, such as annual reports and analyses, we wanted to try something different. We wanted to put people first, and we wanted to try to tell people that we're in communities, talking to real people, trying to affect real change, instead of sending a press release. So we've done this a number of times. This latest project that I'm working on is a 3-part multimedia storytelling series set to debut in 2020, all about manufacturing in the industrial heartland. I won't belabor this, but it's been a huge process and a huge project for me. We study the industrial heartland within the Cleveland Fed because it is part of the region that we serve. We also study and report about manufacturing trends because it is a sector that moves the economy. And so we're responsible, again, for watching, monitoring, and doing what we can to ensure the stability of economies. So I talked to 17+ people, internal and external sources. We toured 2 different manufacturing plants, one, the stereotypical loud, dirty, dangerous one, and another that was so clean I think you could have probably eaten off of its floor. I get into the office. I spend weeks working on this draft. I write 7,000 words, so I'll stop there. And I send it to the editors, and I feel like my oldest child here in orange when I send it. I'm feeling like, hallelujah, get away from me. I want to get started. I want to see you going through this process, have the editors react to it. Hopefully they see the work that has gone into it, the investment I feel for this piece. And so I submit it. And you'll see here, we also have my littlest son. I have no idea why he's scowling like that. But his face right there is how you could describe how I felt when that draft came back with 777 revisions. It's okay. So it's track changes. Oh, at least I told myself it was okay. It came back with track changes. It comes back with a lot of comments. Probably most material of which is they said 7,000 words. Whew, you are really expectant of your audience. Let's break it into a 3-part series. Let's stagger its release. And what that meant is that I could expound upon certain points that I was making, but it also meant that I was going to need to do what? Rewrite. So this, again, is my face. Because I'm tired, and I just wanted to feel like I had made progress, and I found myself back at the starting line. Now, I do want to clarify, this is not my face because I'm frustrated with editors or angry about the process. Ultimately, nothing that I do will be better for audiences if I don't have collaboration, right? So editors who are willing to tell me what I have not clarified well enough, what I have not described strongly enough, quotations that I should have stricken because they weren't strong and they didn't actually sound like a human. The same is true for designers and videographers and podcasters with whom we work. We need that collaboration. But the truth is, all writing is rewriting. All writing is hard work. You would think that I would stop feeling like my oldest son, like, rah, rah, it's time, after 15 years of doing this work, but it still is a learning process, and ultimately, again, that collaborative effort makes every piece that I write better for the audience, but it also makes me better. So today, I want to share 3 dangers that I feel content marketers can face in the work that we do. I want to share 2 projects that I've been working on this year that have been teaching me a lot, and then 1 truth. Now, I did try to share with you a little bit about the Federal Reserve. If you've ever seen a Federal Reserve policymaker or speaker speak, you know what I'm about to do. And that is, I'm going to share, these views are my own, and not necessarily those of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland, nor the Federal Reserve, or the Federal Reserve System. So with that, let's get cracking. The agenda. I want to talk to you about what happened to that 7,000-word manuscript and to everything that I've ever written, pretty much, which is people and I work together to tear apart and rebuild, and that has led me to try to do that myself before I ever give a draft to editors, right? So there are 4 or 5 things I'd like to share that I try to do and that I've learned to do better through this project when I'm looking at a draft of storytelling, be it for podcast or video or long-form writing. 2, I want to talk about some new things that I either have tried to do during my career or would like to do but haven't found that project for doing it. I want to stop and say, if you know of a type of storytelling structure or format that you have seen that kept you from beginning to end and you don't see it or hear about it when I speak, please come up and talk to me because I am hungry to try new things. And 3, stories that rock, answer the right questions. I truly believe that if we do not do that groundwork first, nothing that we do afterward matters as much. We have got to answer our audience's questions. So I'll start with the process of tearing apart and rebuilding. Again, you heard about the revisions that came in. And so here, what follow are some tips that I, again, remind myself as I'm looking at a draft that I am very excited about, but perhaps need to go back in and rewrite. So first, the danger, I think, in content creation can be that if you have 15 years, if you have 1 year, if you have 25, perhaps you don't have a team of editors or collaborators around you helping to improve your content, or perhaps, and I hope that we never get this way, we think we don't need that. I think the danger in not having a second reviewer or a third reviewer is that we make mistakes, both grammatically, but more importantly, with accuracy. Content marketing world has really drilled into my head, but prior to CMW, a journalism career really drilled into my head that if you don't have credibility, if you're not accurate for your audiences, you really don't have much. So, 1, intentionally build the story arc. Set the stage, show the conflict, deliver the resolution. I will admit that this was not always my life as a newspaper reporter. So sometimes I'm at a school board meeting and I see 200 people, they have their imaginary pitchforks, they're pissed off about something the school board's doing, and it's my time at the end of that meeting to go and write the story. It is not an exaggeration to say that sometimes that needed to happen in 45 minutes in my car before the plates were set on the press. I'm not storyboarding at that point. I am not thinking about the stage I'm setting and the conflict that I need to let rise. I'm not thinking about the resolution. I'm thinking, I need to get this done, and I need to get it done accurately. So I have a little bit more breathing room within an organization, and sometimes we'll have that, and sometimes we won't, I recognize. So where you can, my suggestion is find the stage, set it, find the conflict, allow it to build, and give the audience some form of resolution. The example in the manufacturing piece goes a little bit like this. In the industrial heartland, of course, if any of you are familiar with that central part of the United States, you know that it has enjoyed humongous booms in manufacturing, right? Black smoke belching out of factories and the like. It is also true that it it suffered some precipitous declines in manufacturing jobs twice. And now we're into, so that's the stage that I'm setting with part 1. Part 2 is all about a conflict that this industry feels. And if any of you are in manufacturing, perhaps you live it. And that is that manufacturers need people to work for them, skilled people, and they cannot find enough of them. And not only is that the conflict that I allow to build in part 2, but there's also this. When manufacturing is loud, oily, dangerous, not every mother and father is telling their kids to go into manufacturing. The same is true when the same conflict rises when you think about places like Lordstown, Ohio. If you're not familiar, Lordstown, Ohio is not far from here, and it just had GM unallocate a plant for it. 1,600 people lost their jobs. You can sense then, right? You can see the reason why manufacturers would have a really hard time at times attracting people to come work for them, despite the fact that they offer pretty good pay for people who do not have bachelor's degrees, for people who can then train up while they're employed. So I will share with you that the resolution will be known to all of you when you tune in for part 3 of the multimedia series. So next up, seek to immerse the audience in the story. Even 15 years in, I catch myself rereading pieces that I've written, and I'm disappointed that I said something, that I told the reader something rather than showing them something. Here's an example. So I'll give you a peek into the first draft of the very first sentences of my story and an edited, revised draft. So you can see I've written this in past tense. This is all about the history that people in the industrial heartland lived. The sour smell, I'm going to read a little bit just in case you can't read it. The sour smell of the steel mills and the burning coal pervaded the air. Sailors approaching from Lake Erie's waters could smell the oil well before they docked in Cleveland. The chug of locomotives and the rumbling of their cars was nearly constant. So an editor, one of those editors who gave me 777 revisions, says to me, I think that you can affect an immediacy for the audience with a simple pivot. And that is, even when you're writing about history, attempt to use present tense. I've done this in the past, it's just sometimes you forget because you're in the throes of battle with a project. So here you can see a revised. It's not necessarily what we'll publish because God knows the revisions aren't done. But they're not on solid land yet, but the sailors approaching from Lake Erie smell it already, the oil of the Standard Oil Company. The chug and rumble of locomotives loaded with goods is nearly constant, and factory whistles signal the start of a shift and hours later the time to go home. Does it feel like to you you're a part of that picture now versus just reading a history book? Because that's the intended benefit of making that pivot. So all of this is focused on trying our best to immerse a reader in the piece that we're writing. And I have some more tips following for how we do that. This is just one. 3, use quotations when they pack a punch. I am still catching myself putting quotations into pieces, whether it's written in your case or a podcast or a video. I still catch myself leaving quotations in because, well, I got to let that person in because they interviewed, they spent that time with me. I don't want to disappoint them. Fact of the matter is, quotations should only stay in when they sound really, really like the person, and that person speaks differently and more emphatically or perhaps more colorfully or emotionally. So they need to pack a punch. I advise you to watch for these quotations constantly, and here's why. You ever watch one of those documentaries where you can see like the person being mic'd up and they're asking like for Fiji water and cucumbers and, can you make my scrambled eggs extra soft? And the videographer has made a conscious decision to let you in on that behind the scenes. Look at what this person is like before they're actually live. I try to do that inside my organization in conference rooms. I try to do that when I'm at a manufacturing plant, and you'll see here what I mean. So I go see one manufacturing plant of a man named Dan Moore. He has 19 companies. He owns 19 manufacturing companies. And I move from a conference room where I'm typing, keeping up with his interview, to the plant, one of the plants that he owns. And I noticed a few things immediately. The only way I captured what I was able to write is because I had my notebook out on that transition, taking notes, being very observant. You can see I write, when Moore steps inside his sprawling center, his numerous employees, teammates, he corrects me, I'm jotting this down, because to me that says something about someone. You own 19 companies, they're your teammates, they're not my employees. They hug him, they wave to him. So bear in mind again, this is someone who owns 19 companies, and these people know him by face and then want to hug their CEO and chairman. And last but not least, in Windsor Ford, this general manager of Sandwich greets Moore with a pen, a paper, and "Can I get a quick autograph from you, big dog?" Again, I use this quotation because I felt like it really said something about the relationship that Dan has with his employees. Last but not least, opt for specific detail over adjectives. And I know that this has probably been drilled into all of our minds as storytellers, but I still catch myself making mistakes in using adjectives where I could have thought about a sensory detail, or I could have looked around instead. So here's an example. My husband is right here, and he is part owner of a fantasy football podcast and company where they will help you to make your fantasy football season terrific. And so he's writing a bio, and he tells me, I'm going to write and tell people that I'm fanatical about fantasy football. And I said, oh, because nobody can say that? Well, nobody else is playing for 15 years. Well, not everybody can say that. Write that then. Remember, fanatical is the adjective. The detail is that you've been playing it for 15 years. And then I expressed to him, I also feel like a few other details should be shared. You purchased a gold jacket reminiscent of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, gold jackets that the inductees wear. You purchased a decal that says Pro Football Hall of Fame. You ironed it onto your jacket just so that you could wear it to your fantasy football draft and remind everyone who took that trophy last year. So in my mind, you can say you're fanatical, or you can share those details and let it be seen for itself.